Alright, before jumping into the hands, just going to run through a few things about this location since I haven't been here for a while. Bay 101 is directly across the street from Casino Matrix in San Jose, and they recently reopened for poker playing 8-handed, 235 no limit, outdoors under a tent, $500 cap, and the most unique detail is that they don't allow you to change tables. Not sure if this is a COVID protocol or an intervention for guys and gals that have commitment issues. Anyways, first notable hand takes place when I don't yet have the camera ready. It's a straddle pot, low jack calls, and I raise the 40 from the hijack with ace-4 of clubs, straddler, and the low jack call. 3 ways to a flop of king jack 8 rainbow. Not much here except for some hopeful backdoors. Checks to me, I check back. Turn comes the jack of clubs, so I pick up the nut club draw. Straddler checks, low jack bets 50, not gonna fold, I put in the chips, and the straddler folds. River comes, the 9 of clubs, so I get there. Low jack checks and looking to target a jack or king. I bet 140, and after he goes into the tank for a while, he jams for 240. Never a bluff, and it feels like a Hollywood full house, but I gotta see it and call. He tables, king 10 of clubs for weaker value, so fortunate for me to not run into it here, and instead, I outflush my opponent. Next hand is a quick one, but there are some key takeaways. There's a limb from under the gun. Low jack raises pretty big, 35. Gets to me in the big blind with ace 9 of hearts. I defend, and under the gun drops out. Heads up to a flop of king 9-6, 2 clubs, and a spade. Flop middle pair on a fairly dynamic board. I check, and he c-bets nearly pot, $65. I'd like to defend here, but a few problems in this spot. 1, his sizing. 2, it's difficult to cleanly improve with this hand. And 3, most runouts are going to be very poor for my hand. I let it go. Next hand is fairly straightforward. I raise a 20 from under the gun with ace-jack offsuit. The big blind defends. We go to a flop of ace-queen 7 rainbow. Checks to me. I c-bet 20. Big blind calls. Turn comes an 8 of spades. He checks once more. 50 for me this time. And that's enough for this hand as he folds. If the turn was a 5 or lower, entertaining a check back would have been reasonable since there aren't too many draws that would come through on the river. But given that the turn was an 8 of spades, putting up additional draws, I think continuing to bet on the turn was the right play. Next hand is a straddle pot, hijack calls. I raise the 40 from the cutoff with king queen offsuit, big blind, and the hijack limper call. We go to a flop of ace jack 10. So even though I'm in San Jose, I brought a little bit of San Francisco with me as I flop Broadway. Checks to me, I bet 75, button folds, and the hijack calls. The turn comes a 3 of spades, nice blank, and he checks with 450 back. The nice thing about my hand is that I unblock 2 pair holdings as well as clubs, and it is a bit of an awkward stack depth for bet sizing. I ultimately settle for 150, which would leave a half pot jam for the river. He picks up his cards for a closer look, which usually indicates a fold, and that is what he ends up doing. 7-handed in this next one, I raise a 20 from the low jack with ace 10 offsuit, and I get calls from the hijack, cutoff, and big blind. 4 ways to a flop of queen 6-3, a couple of spades and a heart. Big blind checks, I check, and neither of the 2 late position players bet either. Turn comes a 3 of hearts, putting up a second flush draw. Checks to me, I decide to bet 40. It's a bit thin, but plenty of draws out there, all of which I unblock. Only the hijack calls. River comes a king of diamonds, so the draw's brick. I think about it for a bit, but I feel like I've got enough showdown and could perhaps pick off a bluff should he bet. I would have liked to see a non-king or non-jack river so that my ace 10 does play, but I do check it over to him, and he ultimately knuckles back. My hand is no good though as he tables pocket deuces. So no good here, and looking back, I would have liked to turn my hand into a bluff to get him off those small pair type of holdings. In this next hand, cutoff, who seems to be opening up a bit after running bad, raises to 25. I call from the button with 6-8 of hearts, and we go heads up to a flop of 7-3-3, a couple of hearts. He fires 45, playing another 500 back, so we are deep enough to peel, and that's what I do. Turn comes a 10 of clubs. I pick up additional equity. He checks this time, and I take the green light and bet 105. He doesn't think too long and lets it go. So good result here with the 8 high. Next hand, I raise a 20 from under the gun with 9-10 of hearts, and I get 3 callers. Flop comes jack 6 deuce, dry flop. The jack being a heart is nice since it gives me a straight flush in 3-card poker, but it also gives me opportunity to barrel turns. I fire 40, and unfortunately this bet doesn't get called. It gets min raised by a player who has only another 65 back, folds to me, and I gotta just let it go. He does show his hand, ace jack offsuit. This next hand is pretty interesting. There's a raise to 15 from under the gun, and there are 2 callers before it gets to me in the big blind with ace-king offsuit. I 3-bet it to 90, and I get calls from under the gun and the cutoff. We go to a flop of 7-6-5 rainbow. Not a great flop. I check, and fortunately, the other 2 players check as well. Turn is a 7 of clubs, and this is a good card as it reduces the likelihood of them having value hands that beat me. With ace-king here, I obviously block aces and kings and can rep those hands, so I fire 160. Under the gun drops out quickly, and cutoff, tank fold. So good result here with the ace-king. This next hand might garner some critique. There's a raise from under the gun to 20. I'm in the cutoff with pocket queens. The player in the under the gun seems pretty good and studied, so I choose to just flat. Heads up to a flop of 7-5 deuce, couple of hearts, and a diamond. He checks, and I decide to continue to play this hand tricky and check back. Turn comes a 6 of spades, making the board a bit more connected. This time he bets 30, and I choose to just play it slow again. I call. River comes a 10 of clubs. This time he bets 100, and again, I play this hand so strange that I think it'd be difficult to put in a raise now, so I just call. He tables pocket fives for the flop set, so he's opening a bit lighter from under the gun than expected. So I lose this one, but I do get some information. The main criticism / question is why I didn't 3-bet pre. Variety of reasons at play, one of which was that the raise was coming from what I perceived to be a studied player from under the gun, along with some other considerations for future play. That said, not 3-betting pre cost me this time. Hand immediately after, it's the first time I get to call myself a chick magnet as I pick up queens again in the hijack and raise to 25 after there is a limper. Button, a very tight player, 3-bets to 70 with 260 back. Gets to me, and I just call. Flop comes 10-10-4. I check. He c-bets 70. Against this specific opponent, I needed to turn my threesome into a foursome. Unfortunately, I don't find a lady in the community, and I make the exploitative fold, and after I do, he shows pocket aces. This next hand develops shortly after I lose with queens back-to-back. Early position, button, and small blind call to 5. I'm in the big blind with pocket nines and raises to 30. Early position and small blind call. We go to a flop of jack 7-3 rainbow. Checks to me, I bet 50 for protection. Early position folds and small blind calls. Turn comes an 8 of spades, and this time small blind leads for 75. I'm close to dead against a jack, but I also feel like he could be doing this with some backdoor equity that he picked up. The problem is that I have the 9 of spades in my hand, which covers a lot of that backdoor equity. However, I end up calling anyway, and the river comes a 9 of diamonds. So now I make a set on a one-liner board. He keeps firing, 160, and I pretty much hate this spot now, and just hoping that he has 2 pair, I call. Instead he tables jack 10 offsuit, so I was unfortunately behind all the way post-flop, made a very poor call on the turn that ended up costing me more on the river. Next time there's a limp from under the gun. I raise a 25 with king-queen offsuit from middle position, and I get calls from the low jack, hijack, and under the gun. 4 ways to a flop of king 8-4, all black with a spade draw. Checks to me. I c-bet 60, low jack folds, and tight player in the hijack calls. He's the same player that had aces earlier. Under the gun folds. We go heads up to a turn of a 9 of spades, completing the front door flush. I check. He bets 80. I fold yet again, and he shows pocket 4, so at least the turn saves me some money. After going cold in consecutive hands, I pick up 9-10 of diamonds from middle position and raise to 25 after there is an early position caller. I get 3 callers, and we go 4 ways to a flop of queen jack 8. So I flop the joint, checks to me, I bet 50, the button, and big blind call. Turn comes a 9 of hearts, so now I no longer have the nuts. Big blind leads this time, $100. I decide to just call, and the button folds. River comes a 3 of spades. Big blind checks this time, and good sign of course. I try to eke out some value. 130. He deliberates a bit and lets it go. Last notable hand, it's a straddle pot. I'm first to act and raise to 30 with pocket queens again. I get calls from the cutoff and the straddler, and we go to a flop of jack 8-4, 2 hearts and a spade. Checks to me, I c-bet 50, cutoff folds, and the straddler calls. Turn comes a 3 of clubs, very good blank. Checks to me, and ton of hands I can get value from, so I continue betting. 160. Straddler thinks for a bit and makes the call. River comes a 7 of clubs. The hearts brick out, but it does complete 9-10. Straddler puts out a block bet of 135 with another 450-ish back. Pretty good bet by him as it does freeze me up. If he doesn't have 9-10, I'm not sure if he can call me with worse should I put in a raise. All that said, I just call. He says good hand as he tables 10-8 offsuit. All right, a little too windy out there, but got in the game for 900 out for 971, so book a very modest profit of $71. Very up and down session, but happy to book a small win and hopefully just build from here, and hopefully it's a sign of better things to come. So with that, that's going to wrap it up for this one. Thank you for the support as always, and I would appreciate a sub if you haven't already. See you guys on the next one.